Hello, everyone, and welcome to Debra and Peter Are Doing a Podcast with me, Peter Wanless, and her, Deborah Alcott-Tyler, the Chief Executive of the Directory of Social Change. Hello, Deborah. How have you been?
I've been all right, Peter. I've been all right. Love your shirt today, by the way. Really spring-like. Very nice.
Thank you very much. Yes, sun's shining here. We've got more ducklings.
Oh, no.
A whole load more ducklings were born over the weekend.
And are the cats stalking the ducklings, or are they leaving them in respect?
A little bit, but they're surviving. Everyone is surviving so far in a mood of mutual respect. So long may it continue.
Tolerance.
Yes, exactly. We might come back to tolerance.
Cats and ducklings can get on.
Yeah.
Cats and small birds. Well, although they're not small really, ducklings, are they? Small relative to ducks, but...
Oh, we got some small birds as well. So we had a whole load of fledgling jackdaws that were in a box in our garage, squawking away for ages and ages. And I was worried about them. I thought they were going to jump out of this box and land on the floor and be brought to us by the cats. But they're not squawking anymore. So they've left the box to where, I don't know, but there are no kind of feathers or dead little birds around the floor either. So
no skeletons.
So that's more good wildlife news from Somerset.
Oh, good. I'm really glad to hear it. Yeah, so talking of podcasts, I must tell you, I did a podcast a few weeks ago. It was a proper, like you and I, of course, are doing this over our iPads, in sort of, in modern life is that you can do that. But this was in a proper studio, but it was like a room all set up. So they're like really comfy sofas. It was like really posh, and it was filmed properly and all the rest of it. And so it was quite intimidating, but actually I really, really enjoyed it. It was for a podcast called Leading Lights, and it's run by a company called Moreover, which is run by this woman called Abby, who was the person who interviewed me. But what was absolutely mortifying about it is that she started crying in the middle of the podcast, Bessa. And that's never happened to me before. And it was something I'd said about people. I can't properly remember now what it was, but she did get all emotional. So I felt both really moved and terribly guilty. But actually, it also made me think that we should do more crying in real life, because it's also quite empowering that people, you sort of see there's a human being here who's affected by what she's been thinking about. She was an absolute delight. She was so lovely. The only thing I hate about it is because although it's a podcast, so it mostly got an audio, it was nonetheless filmed. And unfortunately, the chairs that we were sat in did me and my figure no favours whatsoever. I mean, I know I've put on absolutely masses of weight. It's a cause of constant distress for me. For this particular video, oh my God, I look like Jabba the Hutt, only not quite as attractive. Jabba the Hutt in a frock. That's what I look like. So, and that's the thing, isn't it, Peter, about, seeing yourself constantly visually when you're in a leadership role. I don't know about you, but I've always got my face plastered over a brochure somewhere or pictures or something. And that's why actually the astute people will notice that quite a lot of my pictures are from quite a long time ago, but I don't want to change them because I think I looked better then.
Or we're seeing your shoes.
Or you're seeing my shoes, exactly. Yeah. So very funny. But
I don't know. We're all, I think it's a very human thing to be uber critical of one's own appearance, isn't it? And it's difficult, especially when you're not used to these things. But sometimes it can be really strange hearing your voice, never mind what you look like. I'm sure it can't be as bad as you're suggesting. But the tears, they were tears for a good reason, were they? You didn't reduce her to tears through haranguing her about asking bad questions or anything like that.
No, I don't think so. I think she just got very emotionally touched by the conversations we were having. We were talking about how, I was basically saying that one of the things I've learned in over 40 years being in the sector is that most people are basically wonderful. There are pockets of people who aren't particularly kind, but there's so few of them compared to the number of people who are willing to show up. And that's the thing, isn't it, about human beings are so complex. One of the things I was talking about was the halo horns theory, where we have a tendency as human beings to put some people on pedestals and they're our heroes with halos, and then other people we think are awful and they become horns. And actually very few people in the world are any of those extremes. Most of us are complex, conflicted human beings bumbling our way through life, trying our best to do as least damage as possible to the people around us, which I think is true. Yeah, it's the complexity of humans when when people get really outraged about somebody taking a particular political stance. I always think of the people I know who have political views I really dislike, and I remember how much I like the person.
Yeah.
For other things apart from that. So yeah, I think but it was super interesting, and she explored loads of things with me, which got me really thinking hard about life.
Are you a crier yourself? What brings you to tears?
I used to think I was, but not much really.
Mm.
I mean, if the dog dies in a movie, I'm absolutely reduced to pieces. But I always thought I was quite emotional, but I'm not. I think as I've got older, less makes me cry, because it's more like, well, this is the thing. Or like, okay, that bad thing happened, that person probably didn't mean to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you sort of become more, you've seen most things that people can do and say, and you realize that most of the time it's about them, not about you. So I don't cry particularly often, but I do think crying is quite healthy, I have to say, especially for men.
I very, very rarely cry. I think I've said on here before, the last time I cried was when our cat Jenny was put to sleep, and she was given this injection which killed her. But even as she was being killed, she was purring.
I know.
And you just think that's such a weird and horrible set of emotions. But anyway, there we are. Let's think of something happier to talk about. What about the London Marathon? That raised a lot of money in profile for
that record-breaking, that chap whose name completely escapes me because I'm not terribly good at sporting stuff, but where he was the first person ever actually to do the marathon in under 2 hours, which apparently is pretty spectacular. I mean, I don't know, whatever you told me, I would say, like, gosh, that sounds good. 24 hours, I think, yay, that sounds brilliant to me. But so the record-breaking, I think the women's runners broke a record as well, did they? I can't remember. But anyway, record-breaking.
And it was hot.
So hot, yes, which is, quite. And in fact, the interesting thing is it being hot is nice for the spectators and awful for the runners, who'd rather have like a little bit of soft, cold rain on something a bit milder. But actually, the really good news about it was it's estimated to have brought in almost £90 million, which is more. I think it was 83 million or something last year. So it's brought in a lot more than last year. And it just reminds you, doesn't it, that people are generous and they do stuff and they do donate, and But what did get me thinking about a bit is because the marathon is participatory fundraising, isn't it? So you go into lottery, you enter, and then you have to raise money for charity, and in order to have your place. And there are clearly people who enter not because they really care about the charity, but because they want to run in the marathon, and this is a way of doing it. And I've always had that kind of mixed feelings about participatory fundraising, when people sit in a tub of beans for 8 hours and get filmed by the local media, or the story of the local newspaper, or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro for charity, sort of thing. Who is really benefiting here? So I've always had that little bit of, because I've obviously loads of people who've done sort of, quite good things, running marathons and climbing mountains and all the rest of it for charity. But I'm never entirely sure if that's what they're actually doing it for, if it's something that makes them feel good. On the other hand, they are raising money for charity. So, how dare I, be skeptical of it?
These human endurance efforts seem to have really tapped into something which people want to give money to, haven't they? I mean, the centerpiece of comic relief these days seems to be someone famous doing some crazy number of multiple marathons, or cycling up and down the length and breadth of the country, and they raise extraordinary sums as large numbers of people associate with that kind of spirit of endeavor, which feels like a kind of indirect way of motivating and moving people to give money to the real causes, which are the children who are in need. But then these sort of savior hero rise to the rescue of poor unfortunate children, that has gone a bit out of fashion in terms of a way of telling a message. So maybe this is as good as any.
I mean, it feels I just feel very conflicted about it because I want people to raise money for charity, and I think that's a good thing to do. Do the motives of people doing this sort of participatory fundraising matter? No, it really doesn't. If they get a load of fame and glory and attention out of it, probably a bonus for them. But I don't know. It just sits weirdly for me, especially celebrities. We sort of think that it boosts their career enormously. But then why shouldn't they? If you can raise money for charity and do something that helps you personally, who am I to say you shouldn't do it, really? I think the only thing that bothers me is that, so they were raising money for BBC Children in Need, but all BBC Children in Need is a fund distributor.
Yeah.
And actually it's like you hear a lot about the hero on the bike. I think it was Greg James or something, wasn't it, this year, on a bike or something like that? I can't remember. You hear a lot about the hero on the bike. You don't actually hear as much about, who's going to get helped and how much charities need. And, and also I often think that there are a real opportunity to properly educate people about charities so we don't get so much ignorance. A huge opportunity to say, this money is going to help a charity to run well, every penny that you donate, and that we then distribute to the trust. It will be accounted for properly by the charities we give it to. We have a finance person who, banks the checks and stuff like that. So I often think they're sort of slightly missed opportunities, but then it's a juxtaposition, isn't it, of wanting to get viewers versus educating. And of course the BBC Children Need would probably like to educate viewers, but the BBC itself is like, just get lots of clicks. This will help us in our fight with the government about why we should still exist.
Yes, and get as much money as we possibly can at this moment in time for our particular appeal, rather than illustrate to people all the many and varied ways you can get involved yourself every other day of the year to help your causes you care about locally and nationally. Yeah,
it's very true. And again, I feel conflicted about saying it because actually, they raise loads of money. Children in Need does, Comic Relief does, London Marathon does, good on them, and thank them for doing it, really. And for those people who are prepared to step up and train for marathons and things like that. But
my friend Brett, who is the people director at the NSPCC, who seems to run a marathon every other week, ran the London Marathon this time dressed as the Pantosaurus, in a hugely hot, furry outfit. I mean, absolute madness. To shuffle around 26 miles in this ridiculous outfit. So the least I could do was sponsor him, but I did say to him, I'm going to give you a donation anyway, but I'm going to give you a bumper donation if either you finish it, or for sensible reasons about your own personal health, you choose not to finish it, because he's just the sort of person that would push himself too far for the cause, and that felt a crazy thing to be doing on such a hot day. Anyway, he finished it, and there's some lovely pictures of him with the Pantosaurus head on and off, looking extremely hot at the finish line. So well done to him and everyone else that completed the race, which is more than I've ever done.
I was going to say, what's the weirdest thing you've ever done, Peter? Have you done anything participatory to raise money?
So in 2016, Childline was the headline partner of the London Marathon, and the previous year the chief executive of Cancer Research UK, who'd been the headline partner, ran the marathon. So there was a working assumption that was what I was going to do, which I was not going to do. And Lady W said to me, if you've got time to train for a marathon, you've got time to decorate the house. So we agreed. I wasn't going to run the marathon, but I said I would do 26 challenges to raise money in lieu of running the marathon.
That's a good idea.
So the first one that I started off with played to my strengths, which was getting 26 selfies with famous people. And the number one selfie is a great picture I've got of me with Ant on one side and Dec on the other side.
Oh my God.
And Ant is holding his one finger up because this was number one of the 26, and it finished with Piers Morgan at 10 Downing Street as number 26. So that was one thing I did. I faced 26 balls bowled at me by the Somerset bowling attack, forgetting that I wasn't really a very good cricketer, and I'd never really faced a ball from a professional bowler ever. And our lovely ladies of a certain age from the Taunton branch all turned up to the cricket ground to watch their hero, aka me, face the fast bowling of, it was Pete Trigo and Craig Overton, who subsequently played for England.
Yeah.
And that really was quite scary. I literally didn't see the first one hit me on the helmet, and the next two I didn't see at all. So that was quite scary. I've abseiled off the top of the KPMG headquarters in Canary Wharf when the partnership of KPMG and NSPCC was announced. It was announced that the two chief executives were going to be abseiling off the top of the building. Neither of us had been told that this was the first fundraising event, so that was interesting.
Terrifying.
Yeah, I don't mind heights. I'd rather do that than run a marathon. I think if it's over quickly and you shut your eyes, anything's possible. I've made a lot of cakes for charity in my in the passage of time. I don't know. How about you? You mentioned sitting in tubs of baked beans earlier. Have you done that or anything similar?
I've never really been into participatory fundraising. I tend to just give money. But the only thing I did do is remember when there was that ALS ice bucket challenge.
Oh yes.
So I used to do a thing called childcare camp, whereas in the summer I'd take a week off and look after all my nieces and nephews and various godchildren, so their parents either got a break or the single mums could go away on holiday, what have you. Often about 8 to 10 of them. There was one particular year where they really wanted to do this challenge. And so my cousin Shan and I said, okay, we'll do it then. But what was quite funny about it, because I'm not stupid, me, you see. So just before the challenge, I went upstairs and I put on an anorak, like a hood. I put a swimming cap on my hair. I wrapped, I sealed myself. And when we came down, and then, of course, the buckets came over us, and my cousin Shan, who's much braver than I am, got completely soaked. And I was absolutely fine. Yes, I'd come dressed for the occasion. But the kids were absolutely enraged about the fact that I cheated because they wanted to see me absolutely soaked to death. So no, I've never been. I'm not a very physical person, Peter, to be honest. More cerebral.
Right.
Better off sending a check than, Yeah.
Or sponsored Sudoku or crossword challenge or something.
Oh, yeah, possibly. Not thought of things like that. Yeah.
Oh wow. So I was thinking. We talked last week about Julia Unwin's address to her kind of inaugural lecture as the chair of the Charity Commission, and we talked about diversity of trustees. But there was another interesting theme which she picked up about charities who are in tension with one another. And let me just read to you this extract of the speech and then ask you a question. So she said, charities must model how to disagree respectfully with both other charities as well as the public, particularly in the current political climate, and should seek to persuade those who have different views rather than to attack them. Charities should not be expected to be cosy, uncontroversial, unpolitical. Charities have always pursued controversial and contested causes, supporting marginalised groups, promoting progressive causes, or indeed supporting causes that are considered by others as regressively conservative. There is no common view within the charitable sector, nor would you expect there to be one. Charities reflect the huge, diverse society we are. There are causes which are undeniably charitable, which some of us would support. There are others we wouldn't, but they remain charitable, because if as citizens we want to benefit from a healthy, rich, vibrant charity sector, we must also offer something in return, namely the willingness to work alongside people who feel and think differently about things that matter deeply to us. So that's a very grown-up articulation of a messy, polarized, noisy world in which charities compete for attention and share of the public purse. And I wondered if you had reflections on that. And it's particularly topical at the moment because of these horrendous anti-Semitic attacks in North London. And one of the things which Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, has said in response to these attacks is that there should be a clampdown on some of the Palestinian protests, which she describes as a festival of hatred. So we've got people who strongly support causes that are in political tension with one another. They may or may not be associated with charities, but charting a course through this polarization and hatred without compromising one's principles is a bit of a battleground. So what do you think about banning protests, and what do you think about where the line is drawn between what is legitimate articulation of a strongly held view and something which is irresponsibly aggressive, racist, threatening?
It's interesting. I mean, first off, well done, Julia, because she's given us loads of food for discussion in our podcast. So thank you. She's giving us content. I think that's also partly a reference to the fact that there are a number of anti-trans charities who are engaging in lawfare against charities that are trans inclusive, so threatening with legal action, things like that. And that's quite a complex area because that's not agreeing nicely. That's not saying, right, you don't believe trans people are real, we do. This is their direct conflict with each other. But we've had that in the past. We've had that with, Countryside Alliance type charities and those who are anti, fox hunting or, pro animals. So it's not particularly new in the sector, I don't think. I think it becomes more nuanced I think charities are the cornerstone of democracy, to be perfectly honest. I think almost in some ways we're the last bastion of democracy because we can pretty much say whatever we want, provided it's not supporting a political party or a particular individual. So I think charities have to be political because that's the only way we're ever going to campaign for change. I think that it is slightly more complex. Well, it's the thing about threat, isn't it? So it's this business of I think Kemi Badenoch was calling for the Palestinian marches, wasn't she, to be cancelled as part of being. I mean, I might be making that. Maybe.
Yeah, I think she's saying it's one thing to express a strong view about something, but to do it over and over and over again, and to chant phrases that are
anti-Semitic
is not acceptable. So there's a couple of things there. There's something about the language which I think everyone is agreeing up to, including Julia Unwin, is unacceptable. But there might be another thing about what is a provocative gesture. I mean, in Northern Ireland we have the marching season,
Orange March,
and people marching through and it's all very kind of carefully policed to try and protect the right to freedom of expression, but it's hard to feel that the gestures are not provocative, and it's where to draw that line, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, firstly, history tells us that you have to do things over and 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 over again to get change. It's very rare that one march, a couple of arguments and a few speeches gets an entire system to change. So I don't agree with that point. I think you have to keep marching to get change. And the reality is that lots of people are in real distress about what's happened in Gaza. And, thousands, 20,000 more, 30,000 people, civilians have died as a result of that. So, that is something I think you can justifiably get angry at. I think the challenge comes when, people, not all people, but quite a lot of people conflate a certain section of society with another section of society. So it's like conflating British Muslims with Iran or Afghanistan. They conflate British Jews with the actions of Israel, which is nonsense, because the actions of a country are not necessarily reflective of the people who love that country or live in that country even. There are Americans in America who are absolutely livid about this war, but they're not attacking every other American for it. Do you see what I'm getting at? So I think it's really complex. I do think, I really feel for our Jewish community. I've got quite a lot of Jewish friends and colleagues, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible. And one of my trustees is Jewish, and she's like terrified to leave her office to go and they have to go to school with armed guards, for Christ's sake. I mean, so there's something profoundly wrong, and they're a particularly vulnerable community, because we don't find any other section of society, any other religious group where they have to have armed guards or guards at their places of worship at the school. So the Jewish people are 100% in a category of their own.
Well, although some mosques have been firebombed, haven't they?
They absolutely have, but as a general practice, the Jewish community have had to have this for absolutely decades. So there's something about a particular weirdness about the way in which people hate Jewish people. But on the other hand, I think it's so important that people should be allowed to march, and to march as often as they need to get their message across. Of course, I don't approve of racist or anti-Semitic or any kind of chants like that, but human beings can be awful. Put them in a mob, they're going to be a mob. And so you can absolutely pick them out and, have them arrested if they're not applying by the rules. And that I do agree with. If they are chanting racist or anti-Semitic stuff, then absolutely they need to get plucked out and taken away. I don't think, you can't manage, unfortunately, a whole group of society like that. But I'm not convinced that banning marches is the answer. Although I'm really pleased to say that the Jewish community are organising a march on Sunday, the 10th of May in central London, where they're inviting people to come and show their support for the Jewish community. And I think that's a great thing. And I think that should be encouraged and supported. I think there is something about I think there's something about not allowing people to march in areas where people in those areas will feel very threatened by it. So I don't think they should be allowed to march in, North London, which is a very heavily Jewish area at all. I absolutely think the places people should march is Parliament, Westminster. That's where they should be marching. And that's the place they're banned from. Because, ever since it was that new measure that was brought in, wasn't it, under Rishi Sunak, I think it was it Priti Patel or one of those? Who brought in who changed the law so that now that you can't march around Westminster anymore. I might be making that up. If somebody wants to correct me, that's sure, but I'm pretty sure that's right now. So the one place you really want people to hear the protest is one place they're probably not going to, because they're so protected in Parliament now. So I think it's complex, because I think you can be absolutely disgusted by what Hamas did, like sick to the core, and feel real anger and rage about it, and absolutely recognise that was Hamas, that was not the people of Gaza. And you can feel exactly the same way about the actions of Netanyahu and his government, and recognise that it's not about Jewish people or even Israeli Jews, because lots of them don't even support the actions. So, and I think people have to learn to live with those discomforts. It's like most people are not responsible for the actions of a few crazy, power-hungry men. I don't know. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, no. Well, I think that you've articulated that extremely well. I was thinking about whether I could translate that back into the trans women's rights context, and see if there were any lessons that we could learn from the principles that you had laid out there to create a stronger sense of I don't know how I want to say mutual respect or appreciation or kindness or tolerance or understanding of where that tension exists between self declaration of one's sexuality and the need for protected spaces for women. And I don't know. It feels terribly difficult territory, and I'm sure you're right that Julia had that context in mind when she was making her remarks as well.
I think there's a fine line, isn't there, between inviting people into your cause and to believe the same things you do versus bullying other people.
Yeah.
So that against their will, they are forced to accept what you say. I think that's a very difficult thing to do. But, the reality is that we will always have contested views in society. We will always have people who disagree. We will always have people whose disagreement is ugly and unpleasant and unkind to other people. But equally, we will more often have people who are actually genuinely interested and want to learn, and you don't have a fixed view, but open to listening to what other people's perspectives are. And sometimes we're all of those. Sometimes, Peter, there are things I'm absolutely absolutely determined. I have my view. I've done my thinking. I've settled on what I believe to be true, and I'm staying there.
Yeah.
And then there are other things which I'm like, I change my mind every 5 minutes because I learn a new piece of information. I think the only thing I would say is, just ideology is fine, actually. Faith is ideology. Let's be honest. Ideology in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Having an ideal about, I don't know, women's rights, that's not a bad thing to have. So we use the term ideology as if it's necessarily bad. But I think what is bad is like accepting other people telling you what your ideology is rather than thinking for yourself.
Yes.
And we need to get people to, by all means, follow an ideology, but question it before you ever step into it, and question it properly. Not question like, prove to me that, what I think is also right. It's like genuine. Okay, so why do you hold that view? That's really interesting. And hands up, I don't always do that myself. There are times when my mind is closed. We're human at the end of the day, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to take a stand on certain things which we believe in and be in our tribes. Okay, well, I think we need to stop. We're out of time. We're going to take a week off. Well, I say we're going to take a week off. There's no podcast next week. You're away. Have a lovely time.
I will. I can't wait. Yeah. But we'll be back the week after. Although I would literally, just still be on holiday, to be honest. So my ability to know what's going on, I intend to switch everything off, Peter. So I'm going to be relying on you to tell us what we need to be talking about.
Okay.
And I'll be largely oblivious. So you'll get to do all the talking. Yay!
All right. I'll keep an eye on what's been happening. And if anyone listening wants to tell us what we should be talking about, we're always keen to hear from listeners as well. Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a lovely holiday. Bye.